Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. As always, I have a fabulous guest with me today, and she's going to tell us a lot about recovering and getting rid of chronic pain. Her name is Katie Wrigley. She is a transformational coach, Cognomovement Practitioner, and she'll tell us all about that and what that means, and host of the Pain Changer podcast. She is also a former chronic pain patient who found herself disabled in her early 40s after years of increasingly severe chronic pain and losing herself in a demanding 20-year-long corporate career. Traditional medicine continued to fail her. Surprise, surprise. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that out loud. As her diagnoses continued to pile up. It all turned around when she was introduced to Cognomovement, which helped her put an end to her decades of chronic pain, and now she helps others to do the same. Katie, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. That was a great intro. I'm happy to be here and excited to be here.
Well, you have a great story, and we can all use a little bit of positive information these days and messages of hope, especially for those of you listeners out there who are dealing with chronic pain or know of somebody who has chronic pain. If they've ever been told, this is it, this is what you're going to have to deal with for the rest of your life, you really want to sit down and listen to this story because it is amazing. And I'd love for you to share it with everybody you know, because no one has to live in chronic pain or live with chronic pain. And our bodies have an amazing capacity to heal itself. So Katie, I'm going to let you just take it away and tell your story.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. So around the time I moved to Colorado, which now I'm actually living in Maine. So I did live in Colorado a while ago. It's something else you and I have in common, Cheryl.
Wow.
Around that time, that was the time that I not so affectionately refer to as the time I blew up my life twice. This was really the culmination of decades of decisions that didn't serve me. And throughout this time, throughout the preceding decades, somewhere in the 90s, I got in a car accident, started to have back pain, started to deal with that. I'm not actually sure how many years I was in chronic pain. Like in some places I say 8 years, but then I'm like, well, wait a second, that only started in 2012. Like that didn't include anything coming from the 90s. But at any rate, it was a lot of time that I spent being incredibly uncomfortable and trying to deal with my body. I can't even tell you how many trips I went on with friends where I was the wet blanket because my back went out or something, or I had a massive asthma attack, or I bust out into hives. And what I didn't understand was that was my body screaming at me. And I continued to ignore it right up until my knee replacement left me disabled. Now, it wasn't a fault of the knee replacement. That was actually a picture perfect surgery. Mm-hmm. But I was not in an environment that was conducive to healing. Mm-hmm. So at around that time, it was every time I went to the doctor, which was about 3 times a week, I got bad news. I had a herniated disc in my neck, which I suspect was from a drunken handstand when I was at the drop zone one night after we had done jumping for the day. And I did a lot of stupid stuff. Mm-hmm. I have 6 bulging discs in my lumbar and sacral spine. They bulge in different directions with worsened scoliosis. What that looked like was I had actually knocked more than 2 inches off of my height. And I had unrelenting nerve pain going down my left leg, and my left leg was starting to actually get a little weaker. So by the time that 2020 was starting to come to a close, which is also the time that I was introduced to Cognomovement, on a bad back day, it almost felt like I had to like push my left leg in front of me because it was the brain to muscle connectivity, just, it wasn't there. And so I was actually like thinking to walk, and I'm like, that scared me. Like, okay, we've already tried all these things. They've worked to various degrees. I had started to open my mind to alternative medicine, but I was still really deeply rooted in traditional medicine. The bulk of the back pain actually came from my L5 facet joint, which is gone. We're assuming that I fractured it. I'm pretty sure I can actually name the day and time that I did it. I had a particularly hard landing from a skydive. I was not good at it. To anybody who wants to skydive, I highly encourage try once, but if you're not good at it, listen to that. Because that was a big bulk of what had happened. And it would have been so easy for me to say, oh, I was just a bad skydiver. And that was what happened. That was part of it. But the
Mhm.
reason why I chose skydiving, the reason why I kept jumping when I clearly wasn't good at it, like they even mentioned a boffed landing. They started to call it the Cape. Like I was known for my bad landings on my drop zone. It's not
Oh,
what you want to get
geez.
known for. It was all of that, the reasons why I wanted to skydive, the reasons that I continued to run from myself, the poor decisions I was making in life. Those were the things that were really contributing to the pain more than the physical injuries. If it had just been the physical injuries, then one, I would have been disabled when I was still jumping, not 2 years after I hung up my rig. And two, healing those injuries would have resulted in no pain. And that wasn't my story. What actually happened is I started to dive in and understand what's going on under here. Oh, I have a lot of anger. I have a lot of sadness. I have a lot of grief. I've actually had a trauma that occurred to me in early life that I have done everything to avoid and run away from. When I started facing all that stuff, that's when my body started to experience relief. That's when I was able to actually have access and have this amazing life that I have now. That's when that became available to me. But as long as I was focused on the problem and saying, oh, it was just a bad skydiver, this is what it wasn't getting me anywhere. And traditional medicine just kept telling me, oh, go ahead and apply for long-term disability. This looks like you're not going to be okay in a few weeks. And go ahead and try this surgery and try this and take this med and take that. And it resulted in being constantly inflamed and half asleep all the time, because if you've ever had to take a pain medication, they don't tend to make you hyperactive. They tend to sedate you. So when you're taking them regularly, that's going to be affecting your mind day to day. And so life was at a point where I just couldn't deal with it anymore. And thank God that's when Cognomovement came into the picture and everything changed.
I just have to say this because it's like these words are just sticking out to me in red neon light. No one wants to hear those words, those 3 words. Try this surgery.
Yes.
I mean, you just want to grab your purse and run, because no one really wants to try something as invasive and intrusive and without knowing the end result as surgery. And as a physical therapist in my previous life, I'm a recovering PT. I've seen so many surgeries. You never got one back surgery. You'd have 2 or 3 or 4, and they just kept piling on and never really fixed the problem.
You see
So
that a lot.
you
Yeah.
do. So what was it? I mean, when you heard that, try this surgery, because I would imagine that would be kind of like a turning point.
So it was interesting because at that time I got attached to the idea that surgery was the way out. I was listening to my doctors, which can be a dangerous thing. When you start listening to someone other than yourself, that's dangerous. That's a moment to pause and say, okay, wait. How do I actually feel here? Because your subconscious is not going to lead you to something that is dangerous for you. The whole point of the subconscious is to keep you safe and alive. No big deal. Just your safety, just your survival. That's what your subconscious is there for. So even though I was getting used to this idea, every time I thought about it, I started to panic. I was like having visions of myself being in a wheelchair for the rest of my life because the surgery didn't go well. And the reason I was thinking that was because the 2 major surgeries I had a hysterectomy in 2015 for horrific endometriosis. They said I can't even tell you the amount of times, like, you had the worst case I've ever seen. I've heard that so many times in my life. And it's like, oh, good. I was the worst. Go me.
That's another thing you can wear as a badge of honor, along with being the worst skydiver ever.
Well, not the worst ever, because I did survive it, but I was pretty bad.
Oh, God.
So,
Okay.
yeah. And also on the flip side, just because someone has died in a skydiving accident doesn't mean that they were bad at it. You are dealing with the elements. It is a dangerous sport they have made safe through amazing technology. And I'm also not saying anything about anybody else's reasons to skydive. Mine were simply not healthy, but I know other skydivers who have very healthy reasons for doing it. So I just want to give that disclaimer there. But it just got to a point I couldn't deal anymore. It was just too much. And it was so limiting. And so every time I started to tap into this idea of what if this doesn't work, and failing 2 surgeries. So the hysterectomy, I wound up with internal bleeding. I had bled out 2 to 3 pints afterwards. I sprung a leak outside of the surgery window. There was a less than 1% chance of that happening. Went septic, had to get to the ER. So scared the crap out of everybody, including myself. Managed to come back from that. That was about 6 weeks of extra healing to get the blood clot to dissolve. And then with the knee replacement, I got stuck in scar tissue. So they manipulated me under anesthetic, had me in the little leg moving machine. I got stuck in scar tissue again. Then they diagnosed me with CRPS in that leg and told me I was going to need another surgery in order to resolve the scar tissue. And oh yeah, I was also going to need a nerve block to do that, because if they tried to operate on me again, now because I had CRPS, which is complex regional pain syndrome, now the leg was going to be hypersensitive, and operating on it was going to make it worse. So at that point, go ahead.
Well, so I'm stuck on the scar tissue, because what would make them think that, since you are a person who develops a lot of scar tissue, and some people do, some people are more prone to scarring. I'm one of them. And what would make them think that going in and cutting through the scar tissue would not result in even more scar tissue and exacerbate the problem?
Well, they did mention that was a potential outcome, and I was going to have to be recommitted to the whole process. And for anybody who's had a knee replacement, you know that this is pure and utter hell for 6 weeks. You're not mentally or physically comfortable. It is a very grueling return to normalcy to go through a knee replacement. And that's the reason they have preparation before it. I didn't do any of the preparation, but they did warn me. They said, okay, this could happen again. But at that point, I hadn't been able to straighten my leg fully. So they didn't feel like I had a choice, because I was limping, and guess what the limping was doing to my back? It was definitely not making anything easier. So all of that being and I had been limping for 18 months at that point. So we've got this uneven gait that's tweaking my back, which had been misdiagnosed at that point. And so the traditional medical model says, okay, when someone gets there, you go in, you operate, you clean it up, and you fix it. But my body doesn't work that way. So looking at a neurosurgery with a 50-50 outcome, when I'd failed ones that had a 99% chance of success and a 90% chance, I was terrified. So enter my crazy little ball over here. Someone said, hey, check out this special on Gaia. Bill McKenna, he's the founder. He's created this thing called Cognomovement. I'm like, okay, it's a wacky looking ball. Let's give it a shot. You know, talking to my leg and practicing forgiveness finally got me to straighten it all the way. So maybe this crazy ass ball's got something to it. And so I watched the special, and it was going with a lot of the concepts I had already heard about, starting to harness the power of the mind, tapping into the subconscious. I thought, okay, seems to be some validity here. I booked a session with Bill, and my back pain went away. And then it didn't stick that time, because I actually wasn't ready for it. So it went immediately to relief, a quick celebration, followed by a massive panic attack. And I'm like, why am I panicking? And that was because being in pain had become part of my identity, and I didn't know what to do without it.
Okay. I understand that.
Yeah, I'd started to paint this picture of like, oh, I'll go through the surgery like a boss. I'll be a model of what's possible when you have to have a surgery like this, all the while being absolutely terrified of that idea. So half of me is in, half of me is out. So I'm doing like this to the idea, and then enter in this ball. I'm like, oh, now I have a completely different path. But my mind had still been on the other path. And so I had some work there to figure out what I was actually getting out of the pain, which sounds really messed up. Because it wasn't that I was consciously getting something out of the pain. And I see this with other people as well. But when it becomes part of your identity, it's important to know who you're going to be when the pain is gone. Because again, going back to the subconscious, it's not going to take you someplace it doesn't know you're safe. So it's not going to actually let go of that pain signal unless you know what life is going to look like without it. And that is a really important
It's so much a part of your self-image. Once you get to the point, you know, when you are living with that chronic pain, it's a love-hate relationship, because you just hate the pain. And I'm not saying that you love, you know, having it, but it's a given. It's something that you know. And then when all of a sudden the pain is gone, it's almost like you have to reevaluate who you are, and you don't even recognize the person in the mirror.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really great point. And that was part of what I went through. And when I look at other people with chronic pain, people who are suffering with chronic pain are some of the strongest people I know. They're some of the
Mhm.
most resilient people I know. And part of how they feel and witness that strength in themselves, and I include myself in this, former me, is the fact that they're in pain and they can do whatever their peers are doing. That was
Mhm.
a huge piece to me, that I was working for Cisco Systems at the time. I was still in my cybersecurity career, and I won $1 million deal off of 3 calls right before I went into disability. So that was a big piece of it for me, is, oh, like, I'm this productive and I hurt this much. And
Mhm.
so, but once I understood that, then it's like, okay, where else can I see my strength? Where else can I see my intelligence, that I can source this without it hurting me? And then
Mhm.
I can then have the evidence of that strength without it
Mhm.
coming in the form of back pain.
Mhm. So I'm loving the ball thing because I'm here down in my girl cave. This is where I do my recordings, and it's just almost like a little bit of a it's my playpen. I have balls of variety of different sizes and colors and even shapes. I have an egg-shaped ball. And it's amazing much how much fun you can have with a ball. You know what to do
Yeah.
with it. It's a huge part of healing. It's not just that it's relaxing the muscles or lengthening the spine or giving you support. There, to me, when I went through my pain syndrome, it was starting to feel like, okay, I can finally do something. And just sitting on the ball, I started to feel like a kid again. And the years of pain and suffering and all of the other hurts that come along with life, they just started to fade away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that what
Just
happens with your Cogno movement ball? Or
it's
I'm just
part
so
of it.
curious.
It's part of it. So the aspect of play is actually really important for mental health and wellness overall. And you just said it so well, is it kind of peels away the years and you go back to that little girl or little boy that
Yeah.
you were in childhood, before life has hurt you to the degree it's hurt you, before all of the things that have happened to sculpt you into the person you are. It brings you back and reconnects you to that inner child. It's going to raise your energy. It's going to create happy hormones in your brain, all those that are going to counter the effect of pain that's happening in there. So with this ball, though, it actually does a lot more than
Mhm.
just activate play.
Okay,
So
I'm going to interrupt you one more time. I'm sorry, I keep
yes.
interrupting. But just for those of you who are listening to the podcast and not watching on YouTube, Katie right now is holding what looks to be a very fun soccer ball, because it's got a lot of different colored designs on it. So if you want to pop over to the YouTube channel and see what she's holding, you're going to get a much more a clarity of what she's talking about. So you get the visual effect. Continue.
Thank you for that, Cheryl. So on the ball these are actually chakras. So the left side of the brain likes the complex geometric shapes, chakras, and the bright colors. So it activates the left side of the brain. The right side sees and feels that this is 3D, activates the right side. We start to do crossbody with this.
Mhm.
You as a Feldenkrais practitioner, you already know this. The crossbody is one of the ways that we start to learn. So one of the big differences in Cognomovement, we're going to be focused on the physical sensation in the body the entire time. So before we even start to move the ball, we get very clear on the feeling. And what we're doing is we're going to be accessing the subconscious mind through that sensation in the physical body. And the premise of Cognomovement is that your body is expressing for you the emotion that your brain cannot or will not express.
Mhm.
So it's a safe way for your body to be signaling, hey, something's wrong. I need your attention. The problem is we don't often interpret it as that, nor are we taught to look, oh, hey, my back hurts. What's going on? It's, oh, let me go to the doctor. Let me take this. Let me go do that. We aren't actually taught to go inward and start to explore and ask our body why it's giving us that pain signal. So that's part of what we're doing in a Cognomovement session, is we're really feeling it on top of anything else that's going on.
Mhm.
In the cross-body movements, as we're doing this, we're going to start to move information between the two hemispheres of the brain and across the corpus callosum, which is not something that happens in normal day-to-day movements.
Mhm.
When people are under the influence of psychedelics in a ceremonial setting or even in a recreational setting, but in a ceremonial setting where you set your intent and your intentions, and you have a very safe setting around you, set and setting, they always talk about you're going to have something similar. The left and right brain are going to be talking a lot. There's a great special on Netflix called The Mind Explained that had an episode on psychedelics that gives a really good visual for anybody who's interested. Cognomovement is going to start to move that information in the sober mind, which gives you access to more options and solutions that would have been available without the ball or without the system in here. We're also moving the eyes low to high as well. So this is going to be accessing different parts of the brain. For instance, when we start to look up above ourselves, we get into ideas and inspiration. Oh, what's possible here? We start to get into possibility. Whenever your brain is starting to look for possibility, guess what? It's going to let go of the problem. Now you're focused on the solution, what's possible. So you're already starting to shift your focus doing this as well. Once we do the cross body up the body, the other thing that's happening is we're activating all three learning centers at once: auditory, visual, kinesthetic, which makes us a lot stickier. And then the next piece we do, for people watching on YouTube, you won't be able to see this in the audio, of course, but we're actually moving the ball very slowly in a sideways figure 8 or an infinity symbol around the face as we do this, still focused on the feeling in the body. So what this is going to do is any place cells, and we have place cells all over our brains that are attached to different events and memories and emotions that we're feeling in our body. So as we're going along here with the infinity, we're actually going to feel the eyes react as we're touching on a place cell that has to do with the feeling we're focusing on. The cool thing about this is that the problem and the solution are going to be in the same place. And so, like, let's say you're up here and suddenly you see 2 balls, or your eyes get a big nystagmus going on where the pupil's moving in there. You're just breathing into it, micro moving it. Sometimes you see a picture, sometimes not. But when the eyes release, you know that the neurology has resolved itself. And so what we're doing is we're giving their neurology a chance to reconstruct itself around a different perspective or a different presentation of facts.
So I do have a question, and I know you're sitting right now because we're doing this recording, but do you do this in sitting or do you do it lying down? Can you do it either one? Does it really matter?
Sitting or standing usually. So I guess you could do it laying down. I haven't yet, but I'm going to try that. That's actually a great suggestion.
Well, actually, a lot of Feldenkrais lessons are done lying on your back on the floor. And of course, then there's so many thousands of other ones that are done in other positions. But of course, my personal favorite was always in my training, lying on my back, because it was the one time I was able to really let go and release and relax. But I teach a class now to a very active group of dancers, very active, very fit. And I'm teaching Feldenkrais, but I didn't say it at first because I thought, the name kind of puts people off if they don't understand it. So I just kind of snuck it in the back door. But now if we don't do the lesson lying on their backs, they're not happy with me. So I've created this, this situation where it's like, well, okay, we'll just do everything on the floor and that's fine with me. But so it's just really interesting.
It is. And this fall has done so much for me and for clients as well. The eyes are really the key in there. Like, I was working with a police officer yesterday, because this is great to help get that perpetual fight or flight out of the body. It's going to help down-regulate the nervous system, help show them that they're okay. And so he's well-versed at watching the eyes to see if people are drunk or high or something and looking for cues. And he was like, that is so weird that I could feel it as you were saying it. I'm like, yeah, that's the other side of it. But he was able to work through the issue that he's working on. He's had some trouble sleeping. And so we're working through that, and his sleep has been improving more and more. So the main focus, just to kind of go back to there's 3 main ways that we can approach cognitive. We can focus on an emotion, a physical sensation, or a craving. And then there's also ways we can do that. So we can focus on the problem state, which can really start to feel heavy after a while. So when someone's working with me for several weeks, then I'm actually going to shift it, and we're going to come in from the positive side. And what do you want to do? What do you want to be? How do you want to feel? And let them get into that future identity that doesn't seem available yet. And then it's a question of, okay, well, what's in the way of you being in that right now? Oh, I feel like this. Okay. Now we focus on that feeling. We get rid of that. They're going to be closer into the positive already. So it doesn't matter whether you come in from the problem state or the solution state, the problem is going to come to the surface, meaning the thing keeping you from that solution state. It's also incredible for doing manifestations as well. So manifestation, for anybody not really familiar with it, it's not woo. It is getting your mind, body, and spirit in 100% alignment with what it is you desire. And when that happens, what you desire is yours. This is a law of attraction. This is not woo. This is something proven in there. It's the trick is in understanding what you're actually telling yourself and seeing anything that may be in resistance to that. So this clears that resistance out of the way. So the thing that you want just immediately becomes yours. And I've used this myself. I used it on my knees to figure out how to avoid the second knee replacement, because the left one really took the bulk of a lot and wore down a little faster than the right, since the knee replacement didn't go so well. I don't have any pain in either knee now. And the only time I do have pain in my body is when my body is helping me process something out. It doesn't last long. It lasts for days or weeks, depending on what I'm working through. Like right now, I'm working through something really big, and my body has responded to that. And I know, like, okay, I've got eczema on my fingers right now. I had a little cold sore pop out. That's my immune system going, something's going on. I'm listening to that, and I am feeling the things that are a part of that, so that they are no longer in my body making me suffer. And it can be as simple as just learning how to tune into your body to shift it. And Cognomovement is a great way to do that. And it tends to speed up the amount of time that you have to feel something too. So then you don't have this big daunting window where you feel like you're going to be miserable forever. You're feeling it for a couple minutes at a time, and that's it. And then it's gone.
I love what you said about paying attention and listening to your body. I mean, we all know that, but that's a level of self-awareness that's so important. And for people who don't really understand, if you're listening to this going, well, how do I do that? There are so many different ways that you can train your self-awareness. And it's so important, because then when you understand what's happening in your body and you're sensitive to it, then when you do have a problem and you do want to seek medical advice, you're going in well prepared. Because you know, and you can tell your practitioner, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm sensing, this is what I think it might be, or I think it is. And if they just go, they poo-poo you and don't listen to you, then you're not at the right practitioner. Then go to another doctor and try again. But when you have that kind of information, that's really empowering. And if you don't, when you go to the doctor and you say, help me, and I'm not bashing, them, because they don't have a whole lot of time with their patients.
Right.
They just might say, well, here's a pill. They can't figure it out. You are handing your power over to somebody else, your autonomy, and that might not end up well. So you really want to work on that self-awareness and learning how to listen to your body. So contact Katie. She could help you do that.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's an easier process than you would think. It's actually, the first time you do it, it may feel really weird. It may take a little while until you get an answer, but the more you do it, the faster your body's going to give you an answer, the faster you work through that discomfort and on the other side. So it gets easier and easier the more you do this. I've been doing this for years, so it's very automatic. I'm at a point where I can feel my left shoulder right now, and I'm like, okay, we're going to go back and deal with the thing that I know is attached to my left shoulder, because I already know what's in there. I'm working through the layers right now, but it's as easy as like, but I could also be like, oh, my shoulder's bothering me again. I can't believe that's happening. And now I'm locked back in the problem. I'm going to make it feel worse. And I'm ignoring the signals that my body's giving me. And the same thing goes for anybody. If you're staying in the complaining part of it, and it's important to feel what you need to feel. Like I want to make it like, we don't want to just brush over the negative and not acknowledge it at all. That's part of how things get stuck in our body. So it's very important that you have your victim moments. Feel the victim moments, feel all of those, then let it go and start to connect into your body. And it can be as easy as just putting your hand over the area, closing your eyes, going inward and asking, what is here? And just waiting for the answer. You're going to get an answer if you wait long enough. Like, your mind keeps going all over the place. One of my favorite ways to stop that is like, okay, what's my next thought? And then it'll immediately, now you're looking for a thought, none is going to come. But when you're just waiting for your body to answer you, it's kind of the same thing. Like, what is here? You just keep asking, what is here? What is here? And your body is going to give you a response. It's going to give you a picture of a situation that either happened, or it's going to give you an emotion.
I always like to tell my clients, and it's even in one of my books, that one, that pain is a powerful teacher,
Yes,
and it can actually be a gift. But of
absolutely.
course, our initial reaction is to run away. It's pain, run away. Let me find out how I can get rid of it. But if you really stop and listen to it, when I was in physical therapy school, I met a woman who was working with chronic pain and myofascial pain patients. And she used to say, dance with your pain. And
Oh,
when
I
I heard that, I thought, well, that's crazy.
like
Why would I want to do that? I want to dance with a partner. I want to dance by myself. Why would I want to dance with my pain? But once you accept that, and that helps get you into that self-awareness and the understanding.
Yes, absolutely. I love that.
And the other thing I found so fascinating because is the eyes and the eye movement, because
Yeah.
that has such an impact on our neurology, on our physical self. And even, I know that, what do they call it? The million-mile stare or the thousand-mile stare with people who have post-traumatic stress disorder,
Mm.
and trying to focus your eyes. Because when I went through my PTSD, I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as a ballet dancer, we're always staring at ourselves. And I couldn't even look, and ended up with like horrible headaches and upper back pain. It was just a myriad of different things. And the movement of the eyes really has such an impact on the tone of the neck.
It does. And that has a cascading effect down the body as well. Um, and just even you can change your thoughts even just by shifting the position of your eyes. So like
Mhm.
if you're working on a project, you need a little extra creativity, let your vision go over to the left. When you're over to the left, you're actually in your right brain. That's your creative
Mhm.
center. So
Mhm.
it can be as easy as just turning your chair a little bit and like, okay, I want to be a little bit more creative for this. And just
Mhm.
letting that right side be more activated simply by your eyes. On the
Mhm.
flip side, let's say you're trying to work through a crazy problem. You need to be more analytical. Opposite direction. Now you want to look out to the right. So you're in your left brain, your more analytical side. So now you're
Mhm.
bringing your analytical and your problem solving skills to the plate much more than the creative side.
Mhm.
And then if you think you need to flip between the two of them, hey, guess what? That's what you're doing when you're pacing. You're actually pacing back and forth. Pacing is your body working out a situation. Like it may be a move of stress, but every time you turn around and you pace, you're going to go into different lobes of your
Mhm.
brain, having access to the creative side and the analytical side alternatively as you're doing that. Like I've
Mhm.
actually done problem solving sets where I will get up with a notebook and I will walk in figure eights. And we do this in Cognomovement too. That
Mhm.
psychogeography, when we change our position, we can change our perspective. So
Mhm.
I'll walk around with a notepad sometimes thinking about some problem or some question that I'm putting out there into the world. And okay, what do I want to do with this? What is the best way to do this? How can I be of the most service with this? And I will walk around with a notepad. And as I'm walking, like, oh, I could do this. I could do this. I could do this. And the creativity really gets stimulated. All I'm doing is going in between this hemispheres of my brain and stimulating that neural activity with my movement. So there's
Mhm.
lots of different ways that we can do that. But the eyes alone, and what I love about that, if it's someone who has high amounts of pain or someone who has some cognitive decline, where they literally can't follow the instructions because that part of the brain isn't available, they
Mhm.
can still do minimal movements. Like I can hold the ball for them. They can just let their hands go back and forth, whatever they can do. And they can just even as easy as just move the hand side to side if that's all they can do. They can stay seated for the whole session. That we
Mhm.
can do just the eyes. They don't even have to move the arms if they don't want to. There's so much that we have available to us. The ears are actually like a real quick trip into the nervous system. We have so much energy we can release just through our ears. So we
Mhm.
combine all of this to be able to shift things as quickly as possible. Sometimes it's a one and done, but a lot of times with a lot of humans, especially by the time we get into our 40s, we got a few onions of crap to go through. And peeling
Mhm.
back those onions is not going to be one session. So it really just depends on what you're working with and what else you've actually done in the meantime to help move yourself forward. So it's varied for everybody, but it's
Mhm.
the one thing I've seen is that no one is hurt by too much cognitive movement. Your brain will just, you won't be processing anymore if you do quote unquote too much.
Mhm.
And that's not a bad thing. It's actually becomes very quiet in your brain if you do that. I've had it happen The first year I was doing cognitive movement, I had no thoughts, and it was kind of lovely for a couple hours.
Mhm. Yeah,
I
I
laid off of it.
understand. I
Yeah. And
totally understand.
I think I was doing 2 sessions a day at that point.
Mhm.
Plus I was taking some extra classes. Plus I was in practitioner training. So
Mhm.
it was like, that was just, my brain's like, okay, we literally cannot process anymore right now. We're done.
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, cool.
Mhm.
And then by the next day I was back again.
Oh, there are times in my Feldenkrais training, it's like, I don't even think I can drive home right now. Because
Yeah.
we're all day we'd be it was very, very powerful work. But then again, do I really want to get behind the wheel of a car right now? Or maybe I need to just take some time or go get some coffee or maybe just sit and rest for a while. But one of the things that I find so fascinating, and this was what I experienced with my Feldenkrais work as well, and with my clients, is that when you're in chronic pain and you have been beaten up pretty much by life, by the medical profession, when they're trying to help you, things just might not be going right. To come into something that is so gentle and so supportive is almost like it's such a shock, because everything up until this point that you've had to do to get rid of the pain included making the pain worse.
Mhm.
And so to have something that's so gentle, so supportive, and just so, I don't want to say minimal, but it's not effort. It's
Mm-mm.
so gentle and so, I don't know, it's a completely different way of treating pain and dysfunction that I don't understand. Well, I kind of do, why more people don't embrace it, or why more people don't know about it. Because
And
I would much rather do Cognomovement or Feldenkrais, cranial sacral, than have to do some of the traditional therapeutic methods.
I have that same mindset, Cheryl, and I'm glad that you brought that up. And this isn't a, and when I look at the medical system, the problem is the system itself. It is not the doctors
Right.
who are only allocated 15 minutes with you.
Yeah.
And the support of the medical community, I'm putting that in air quotes, because a lot of times, but sometimes someone's gotten to me, they've been gaslighted.
Mhm.
And that happened to me over and over again. Like, I was at a point around 2016, 2017, where I was researching my own medical records to prove to them how much pain I was in. Like, how messed up is that? That I'm trying to prove to my doctors that I desperately need help. And I don't tolerate any synthetic pain meds, by the way, just as a side note. Advil, Tylenol, Aleve. The only one that I can tolerate, and it still messes with my stomach, is Lodine, which is like a really old analgesic from way back that's super gentle. And it takes a week to even start working. Like, it's just not even worth it to me to even try to do that. Like, opiates,
Mhm.
everything makes me throw up. So I have to take something to keep me from throwing up if I'm in that level of pain. And so at some point I'm like, this is absolutely ridiculous.
Mhm.
I'm taking one pill to be able to take another pill to tell my body to calm down. Like, there has to be another way that I can just cut out those pills and just get my body to calm down on its own. And I finally figured out how to do that, but it took a while. But
Mhm.
you're right. We're really sitting there and listening. So I'm really listening to the client who's in front of me with, what has your experience of this been? How does this feel? When is the first time this occurred? What has the response been? Like, what have you gone through? And a lot of times the feedback I get is like, wow, I feel like you really heard me.
Mhm.
And they haven't felt heard because they're being gaslit, and they're being told that there's nothing wrong with them, or that this should work or that should work. And they're being given all these pharmaceuticals and they're told, oh, these are going to help. They aren't helping. They're masking your symptoms. Sometimes it's something that's helping. So with blood pressure medication, for instance, it is
Mhm.
going to lower the blood pressure. But when you're taking an NSAID, you're masking the pain. You're not healing it at all. You're just lowering the pain signal in your brain, which means that
Mhm.
there is another way that you can lower that signal without taking something that's going to dampen it, because dampening it is not the same thing as healing it. Those are
Mhm.
two completely different outcomes there. You're going to feel like you feel better when you're on Advil, but then you're going to have to take another Advil again.
Mhm.
And sometimes it can help with swelling initially, but then we keep taking it over and over again. There's other ways we can get the swelling down. We can use ice, we can meditate, we can move. There's so many different ways to start to move that inflammatory response in the body without taking something to dampen it.
Absolutely. Well, now I have another question. Well, this is something that's been on my mind for this whole conversation, because I'm looking at your background and I see another ball behind you, and it looks like a real fun one. It's got yellow and orange. And is that part of your cognomovement therapy?
Yes. Yes. So we actually have a beach ball with it as well. So there's a soccer ball and then the beach ball. So
Okay.
for people who have shared walls, like if there was someone over there, that would be really annoying to throw the ball against the wall. But it's just another fun way to do it. So it's the bright colors in here. It's the shapes. So you still get the stimulation in the mind. And it's just fun to play with. It's just much bigger than the soccer ball. So, but yeah, that is part of it too.
Key word there is fun.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, to be able to do something that's gentle, fun, supportive, and somebody not lecturing at you at the same time, and somebody really believing that you do have chronic pain. Yeah, that's a pretty wonderful way to go, I think.
Thank you. And it's empowering too, because at the core of it, you are solving your own problems. I'm facilitating. I'm asking you questions to help you solve your own problem, but you are the one that is in the driver's seat. You are the one that is in control of the session. You are bringing it to the session. And my clients that bring it, and I mean, they have zero resistance to letting it go. If they need to cry, they cry. If they need to scream, they scream. They just aren't allowed to punch me, but they can do anything else that they need to do in a session. You can get mad in the middle of a cognomovement session. Anger can come up and then it goes. But, you know, that's a joke I like to make with them. It's, you know, just don't hit me. Everything else is fine.
As a martial artist, I'm really big on hitting. To me, that was very therapeutic for me. So I could teach you a few ways to get out of the way if somebody does want to punch.
That'd probably be a good idea. Although I am working with police, so they probably know how to get in pretty quickly because they're taught with that. But they're actually the ones I'm least afraid of having hurt me, actually.
I'm sure.
So, yeah.
So, okay, now just, I want you to give the audience the information where they can find you, how they can get a hold of you. But first thing I do want to ask before we do that is, do you work with clients one-on-one in person? Do you work online as well?
Both. So I have 2 days a week. So I'm located in Topsom, Maine, and I have office space in Cumberland, Maine at this amazing integrative health center. So I'm available there Wednesdays and Fridays. And then I'm also available on Zoom worldwide for the other 3 days of the week. So people can reach me either way. I'm actually going to be doing a workshop on March 30th called the Rise Above the Pain workshop. So I have been trickling over the last few weeks, just different ways that people can start to rise above their pain. You can find those on my YouTube channel. I am Coach KT Dubs on all the social, well, not all the social handles, but I'm Coach KT Dubs, and that's COACHKTDUBS on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. So you can find me on it. Oh, and yeah, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Yes.
Okay.
And YouTube.
Excellent. Okay, great. Katie, thank you so much for being here today. This has been a great conversation. I knew the minute I read your profile and I saw that Cognomovement, it's like, I need to have her on the show because she sounds fascinating.
Well, thank you so much.
And
yes,
go ahead. Oh, well, I really appreciate you sharing your story because I think it's so important to give people hope.
Yeah.
And to let them understand there are so many other different modalities out there rather than traditional ones that can help them heal from chronic pain.
Yeah. And this modality, like for those who want to do the work and are they able to focus on it, this is a great modality, but it doesn't speak to everybody. If you want to actually see some before and after, I actually just redid my website. So you can also find me at katiewrigley.com. That's KATIEWRIGLEY. And on the about page, you can see a picture of me the day I was told I needed neurosurgery. And then 16 months later, without any surgery. And then one of my clients actually gave me permission to share her before and after picture, which was 2 hours apart. In that 2 hours, she cleared a lifelong pattern of resentment against her mother. And the difference in her neurology before and after, she started to say that this, you know, maybe we should advertise Cognomovement as Katie Wrigley's wrinkle cream because she looks 10 years younger after that. So you can find that on the services page in there. She gave me permission to share just the picture without her name. And she's just this radiant ball of light. It was such a fun session to work, and seeing the difference of her before and after, like I was watching it in front of me, but even just looking at it on my own, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, look at you. It was so cool to see it. And I love what I do. So yes.
Well, and I love that you're doing it, and it's amazing to see how people can change so quickly. And that's another little tip or message that I want to leave the audience with, is that you are not stuck with chronic pain, and you can get out of chronic pain. You can heal yourself. There are gentle ways of doing it. Please do check out Katie's website. Contact her if you need help. And just remember that the body has an incredible capacity to heal itself. It's all in the mind. So when you change your mindset and start taking charge of your health, magic happens.
I love
And
that.
that is the way of the FemiNinja.